everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields-Milburn.
And I'm Ryan Nicodemus, and together we are the Minimalists.
Oh, we have something special for you today. Malabama's here.
Hi, everybody.
TK Coleman.
Here to say yes for less.
Oh, we got the rest of our team here in the studio. Coming up today on this free public minimal episode, we're talking to a listener about in-house storage and where to store excess stuff. We also have an outstanding lightning round, listener tip, and added value segment for you. You can check out the full 2-hour maximal edition of episode 367, where we answer 4 times the questions and we dive deep into several simple living segments. That private podcast episode is out right now at patreon.com/theminimalists. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free because, say it with me, y'all, advertisements suck. Oh, Jessica asked me to make one note here at the beginning of the podcast. If you do ever see an ad on our YouTube channel, it is not our ad. It'd be like if you saw an ad on Facebook. So we don't monetize our YouTube channel because we don't want to pepper our creations with ads. If YouTube ever decides to turn on an ad on one of our videos, it was without our say, without our permission. We're grateful for the opportunity to upload videos on their platform. We'd prefer that they continue to keep our channel advertisement free. Let's start with our callers, y'all. If you have a question or comment for our show, give us a call, 406-219-7839, or email a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com. Our first question today is from Colette.
Hi, my name is Colette. I'm from Washington, D.C. My husband is a minimalist like me, but he has 7 boxes that we keep in our basement storage closet. It bothers me, and I've told him, but he doesn't want to do anything about it. Is there an effective or loving way to try to explain to him that this bothers me? I'm willing and open to try anything. I've tried over the years, but nothing has worked so far.
So we're going to get Colette on the phone here because I want to know about what is in these 7 boxes that are hiding out in the basement in this storage space or impromptu storage space. So, Professor Sean, if you could get Colette on the phone, well, I'd love to talk to her about this.
7 boxes cluttering.
Hello.
Hey, Colette. Joshua Milburn and the Minimalists here. TK, Ryan are here. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for letting me do it.
Yeah, our pleasure.
I appreciate your question. I'm really curious about these 7 boxes that are hiding in your basement. My first question is, do you even know what is in them? And does your husband know what's in those boxes?
I know what's in them, yes. It's mainly just some books, some old paperwork, some old cards, some old medical paperwork, some old schoolwork. I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, so it's we have these clutter coffins down there. It's a bunch of things that have essentially been rendered useless to you, at least, right? And you would like them to be out of the way. It sounds like they're taking up space. Why does it bother you that they're taking up space down there?
It's a good question. It bothers me because our home is pretty tidy. We don't have a lot of clutter, and both myself and my husband really enjoy that. We can tidy up quickly. It reduces our anxiety. And I feel like it's something that can be done simply and just taken care of. And we don't have to have these boxes that we move with every time we move for the last 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And so every time you move in the last 7 years, you don't open these boxes. You don't use the things in these boxes. They simply they travel from one storage space to another. You know, quite often we have these storage spaces throughout our houses, basements or attics or closets or spare bedrooms, or we turn our regular rooms into storage space as well. And you said that it's clutter, and most of your home just doesn't have clutter in it. And so when our homes are filled with clutter, we usually don't notice the clutter that much. It's hard to see a needle in a haystack, but it's harder to see a needle in a needle stack. And so if you just have tons of clutter, you may not notice a little bit of clutter, but right now what you're saying is I've got this clutter. Now, clutter is anything that gets in the way of your well-being. And so those boxes may not be clutter to your husband. And I think that's where the disconnect is right now. For him, it's not getting in the way of his well-being. It's not even really getting in the way. It's sort of out of sight, out of mind. But of course, as you've experienced, Colette, the boxes are not out of sight, out of mind. They're in your mind. It's creating this mental clutter that you have to deal with. And so I experienced this in my own life. We bought a new house earlier this year, Bex and I did, and she has more stuff than me that she uses. She has some camping gear that we could theoretically fit somewhere in our home. I could cram it into a closet somewhere. We don't have a garage. We don't have a basement. We don't really have a functional attic. So I could find some space for all of her camping gear. But what we decided, and she'd be fine with that, by the way, if she just put that in our little closet in our bedroom, she'd be fine with keeping it in there. But it bothered me. And so I simply asked, hey, can we figure out a solution together? Would you be willing to simply help me clear this clutter? I recognize that it's not clutter to you. It happens to be my issue. It is clutter for me. And so I'm willing to move it to a storage locker and pay for a storage locker for a period of time until we have the space here at our home. Let's say we're actually saving up money to get a shed in the future. But right now we're spending some money on an outside storage locker so that I don't have the clutter in my home. And that might sound crazy as one of the minimalists. Well, you have a storage locker? Yeah, it's really about getting the clutter out of my home so it's not in my way. But I also recognize that, and Ryan taught me this a while ago, that when I have a problem with something in our relationship, the worst thing I can do is make it my partner's problem as well.
Yeah.
And so, Ryan, I don't want Colette to turn this into her husband's problem, because it feels like, oh, if he were just to deal with his problem, then everything would be fine. And that may be true. But I think the truth is, Colette, this may be for you to deal with.
Yeah. Colette, I'm curious, like, have you asked your husband why he's kind of holding on to these boxes? Is it a matter of it's sentimental, or is it more of he just doesn't have the time to go through it? Have you had that conversation with him at all?
Yeah, I have. And it's both of those things, like some sentimental things, and then some things he's saying, oh, I might need it one day. Let's not throw it out. Like, I might need it. I might want to look at it one day. But it's like, I mean, 7 years. Like, he hasn't even opened the box.
Wow. Yeah. I relate with that, because I certainly had the boxes unopened that used to travel with me from place to place, a while ago. Yeah. I love your idea, Josh, about trying to find a solution together. Because this isn't about like, either Colette has to suffer or her husband has to suffer. It's about like, how can they both come to a common ground? And maybe Colette, like, pitching it to him about renting a storage unit to get these things out of the house. If that's worth it to him to spend that money every month, then, maybe that's what you all do. But I'm willing to bet that it's probably not worth the money that he would have to spend on the storage unit.
Yeah, I've got some stats on storage units. I mean, so the storage industry, especially in America, so 90% of all storage units are in the United States of America. Wow. Which is a staggering statistic. So I don't think consumerism is a uniquely American problem, but amassing of consumables, of material possessions, of excess, that is a uniquely American problem. We amass it in all of these storage lockers. So for me, I'm not against the storage industry. There's 1.6 billion square feet of storage space. That means if you put every American in a storage unit, you'd still have extra space left over.
Wow.
So there is a lot of storage space out there. I'm not against that industry if it's useful. Bex uses her camping equipment all the time. It falls within her boundaries. I wouldn't, however, just take 7 boxes of random things we don't use and simply put it in a storage unit, because the cost of that is too high. You're just spending any money on these things that are essentially useless to both of us. The problem right now with your husband is he doesn't realize the pain that you're experiencing because he's not experiencing that same pain. Or if he is, maybe he doesn't even realize that he's experiencing that pain. TK, do you have any insights for Colette?
How's it going, Colette?
Good. How are you?
Good. Have you told your husband how you feel? Like, not so much about the stuff, like we need to get rid of it, but have you expressed to him how much it bothers you and overwhelms you?
I have, and I think it's like a broken record at this point.
How does he respond to it?
He doesn't want to discuss it.
Got you. When Ryan asked you the question, one of the things you mentioned is that some of the stuff he wants on a just in case basis, some of the stuff he just, has to go through. What do you think he would say if you were to say to him something like, hey, look, I really want you to get what you need out of your stuff. And I also really want to protect myself from the way it's affecting me and weighing me down. Some of this stuff you probably should keep. Some of this stuff you might be more willing to give up than you think. Can we put a date on the calendar, even if it's a month from now, where we can just take some time and go through it together and see what we're willing to do and what you need? What do you think he'd say to that?
He might be open to it. I'm willing to try it, definitely.
The reason I propose that is because sometimes when you can get him to state that why, and you can have a discussion about that why, it may be possible to negotiate some agreements between the two of you that allow him to fulfill that why in a different way. So if he's got some just in case items, maybe it can be an agreement between the two of you of like, hey, look, how about if in the future we ever need that, I'll buy it for you, or we could make this kind of agreement in order to alleviate that concern. And maybe there can be some alternative agreements that can help him find some different ways to meet that why.
That's a good idea.
And Colette, I also think that it's really important to set up boundaries here, because we're not talking about, we don't want to go into a conversation like this and say, hey, you need to get rid of these 7 boxes.
Right.
It's not about an ultimatum. Yeah. It's about helping him understand that maybe some of this is junk. Some of it's non-essential, but it's adding some sort of value to your life. Maybe it's sentimental items. But having 100,000 sentimental items really diminishes the sentimentality of those items, right?
Sure.
By keeping a dozen of them instead of 100 or 1,000 sentimental items, you actually get far more value from the sentimental items that you keep. I know when I was going through my mom's stuff, that was one thing that was really important to me. And then the other boundary was, okay, maybe 7 boxes is too much, but maybe, and you need to understand this, maybe 0 boxes is not enough for him.
Yes, that's probably true.
And so maybe we can get this down to 1 box.
And that'd be wonderful.
And he'll get more value from it. You won't have to get an outside storage locker. You can put it in your basement, and you can have it in a really nice bin even. You can go out and you can find a nice, aesthetically pleasing bin where it looks good, doesn't feel like clutter for you. You sort through it together. You have your own little version of a packing party where you're going through these memory triggers. You can even have conversations about the photos and the artwork or anything that's in there. You can laugh at the absurdity together of why was I holding on to this receipt, or why was I holding on to this 14-year-old tax information. And you can make it playful, because right now it's not playful at all. It's the opposite.
No, right.
Yeah.
And he feels like I don't have any control, and she's trying to have some sort of power over me. And that creates resistance in the relationship. And that's not what you want. You simply want to clear the clutter.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Anytime I hear about disagreements like this, I always think about that book, Nonviolent Communication. And Colette, if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend reading it, because what it does is it helps situations like this where one person has an issue, but the other person does not have the issue. And, if you go to your husband and you're like, hey, your boxes are offending me or they're making me upset, like that is going to probably put him on the defense, where, if you approach it in a way where you're like, hey, honey, we've been together for, 5, 10 years, whatever it is. And I really need your help with something. And I know I've asked for your help on this before, but I really am just really asking for you to help me with this situation. And, it's about those boxes. Like they really... they cause me a little bit of anxiety. I know they're important to you, and I want you to have what's important to you. But I'm just wondering if we could find a solution together. Like when you approach it like that, it's more, you can kind of enroll him into helping come up with a solution, rather than, kind of pointing the finger and saying, hey, these are your boxes. You need to do something about them.
Well, one last thing really quickly, Colette, in reference to what Ryan just said, sometimes it can help to write those kinds of things down. If you've had a conversation over and over again that's been ineffective, maybe writing can give not only you a little more control over your tone so that you're not talking about things in the heat of the moment, but in a way that's more reflective and pensive and empathetic. But also for him, it can give him the space to take in your words without you being right there to read and respond to the reaction he has. And that might be something that's useful. I know it might sound crazy to write a letter to your spouse, but
that makes sense.
That might create a little space so that he can process in a way that allows him to give a better reaction.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I do have that book, Ryan.
Oh,
so
awesome.
I think I'll, look over it again for some tips.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one for sure.
It is.
And if you're looking for some more boundaries, you can always download that free ebook we have, the 16 Rules for Living with Less. I think some of those, especially as you're going through the stuff, the just in case rule, the no junk rule, the just for win rule, the seasonality rule, the spontaneous combustion rule, I think all of those will really help you with your conversations with him. You could even have, it's a short book. You can read it in less than half an hour. It's the 16 Rules for Living with Less. You can find that over at theminimalists.com. Colette, thank you so much for your question. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And I love you guys. You guys are great.
Oh, we love you too, Colette. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Ryan, what time is it?
You know what time it is. It's time for the lightning round, where we answer your questions from social media.
Yes, indeed. Now, during the lightning round, that's where we do our best to answer questions with a short, shareable, less than 140 character response. We put the text to these minimal maxims in the show notes over at theminimalists.com/podcast, so you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media if you'd like. And you can find all of our minimal maxims over at minimalmaxims.com. Looks like Lisa has a question for us.
How do I keep stress at bay during a big move? No matter how much I try to plan and organize, it all feels so overwhelming.
Professor Sean, let's get 60 seconds on the clock for my good friend Ryan Nicodemus.
Ooh, it's me? All right, let's go. My pithy answer is this, stress is a weapon people use to abuse themselves.
Yes.
So what I'll say is that when the stress arises within you, it's very easy to use that feeling of anxiety, to use that feeling of stress to beat ourselves up. And I personally used to tell myself that that was virtuous, because I'm taking that negative feeling, I'm dwelling on it, I'm using it to make me feel a certain way. But the problem is this, is that when you abuse yourself with stress, it doesn't help you really do anything different. In fact, it can be paralyzing. So what do you do with that stress? You acknowledge it. You look at what it is trying to show you, because stress and anxiety, it's a symptom. So the question is what is that symptom trying to get you to do? And you know what? Yes, it's trying to get you to be organized and to move and to come up with some type of boundary to help the move go smoothly. So don't use your stress as a weapon against yourself.
That was perfect timing.
Yeah.
TK Coleman, we got 60 seconds on the clock for you. What do you got for Lisa?
When you resent your feelings, you resist the wisdom that they provide. We speak of feelings as if they are good or bad, but what that really means is it's pleasant or unpleasant. It's uncomfortable or it's joyful. But it doesn't mean it is evil for me to have this sensation, or that this sensation is evidence that I am an evil person. It's okay to have an uncomfortable feeling without condemning yourself as being an evil person for having it. I feel jealous. I feel sad. I feel angry. I feel stressed. What's right about that jealousy? What's right about that anger? What's right about that stress? When you answer that question, then you can look at that feeling and say, thank you for pointing out to me the pain that I was experiencing as an indicator of some way in which my life was out of alignment. Now I can get it aligned and I can do what I need to do. And I can say to that feeling, thank you for getting me on track.
Yes. Lisa, I got something pithy for you. Let's do this. So, of course, in your question, you say, no matter how much I organize and plan, I just feel so stressed. I would say maybe you feel so stressed because you're organizing and planning all the time. Organizing is well-planned hoarding. And so we're just constantly moving around all of our excess stuff. If we have too much, it doesn't matter how much you organize it. Yes, you're still going to feel stressed. The opposite of that, though, is you don't want to renounce the stress. You don't want to say, I want no stress for the rest of my life. You might feel like you want no stress for the rest of your life, but then what the heck would you do with your life? Some level of stress shows up, and it shows you what you want to do in order to move forward. Renouncing the stress is not what you want to do. Clinging to the stress, amassing the stress, building more stress is not what you want to do. You want to experience the stress and let it flow through you. You can hold on to it for a moment, but don't cling to it. You can let it go. We got a bunch more to talk about. Oh, we got a home tour as well. We're going to dive into that. We got TK's tweet of the week. We got the amass it or trash it segment, but we do have some patrons who have joined us on a live stream. Let's check in with one of them right now. Alabama, you got any questions for us?
We do. We have a question that comes from Catherine. She says, my body fluctuates due to thyroid issues. Is storing various sizes of clothes okay? When does it become clutter?
No, you have to just wear medium and that's it. Otherwise, you're doing it wrong.
You have to wear your clothes whether they fit or not.
Extra medium is unacceptable. No, here's the thing. Like, we plan for seasons in our life, right? Now, that can be literal seasons. I wear a winter coat in the winter. If I wear that in July in Southern California, it is going to be inappropriate for me. So it's not that you have clothes that are inappropriate all the time, but you have some clothes that are going to be more appropriate for a particular season of your life. And that's okay, unless you feel like holding on to those clothes is getting in the way of your well-being. That's the only time they become clutter. And so we use the seasonality rule. It's in the Minimalist rule book. You can download it for free over at theminimalists.com. We also call that the 90-90 rule. Have I used this thing in the last 90 days? If not, am I going to use it in the next 90 days? Be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then I give myself permission to let it go. But for you, you might need to expand that rule because these aren't rules. They're tools. They're boundaries you can set up for yourself. And so what is the appropriate amount of time for you to understand that, okay, I'm not actually going to use this piece of clothing again.
Right.
And I can give myself permission to let it go. Maybe it's 6 months. Maybe it's 9 months. You get to decide what that boundary is for you, and you can set up the boundary so that you can let go of anything that falls outside of that boundary. That's being compassionate to yourself.
Ooh, yeah. Compassionate to yourself. That's great. I mean, that's the question I would be asking, Catherine. Like, do you need to show yourself a little bit of compassion right now because your body does fluctuate? Or are you looking at your clothes? Because deep down, like, you know or you don't know whether or not you can get rid of some of those clothing items.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's as simple as making the distinction between for me or for someone else after the too much. Is it too much for me or is it too much for someone else?
Right.
And sometimes we can know what's too much for me at the level of visceral experience. But what leaves the question mark there is, what will other people think of me? People that don't know all the details of my story, when they come and see how much stuff I have, my wife and I, because of, my injury and me going through PT, I can't lift as much, as much as I used to. You know what I mean? I used to be able to lift. I used to have no limitations with what I could lift. But
the gym would run out of weights when he was there.
Why did his voice get so deep?
but there have been these moments where maybe my wife is pulling my luggage, or she's carrying a box and I'm walking next to my wife, right? And she's this small, petite girl and she's carrying my stuff and I'm walking next to her. And then a few guys walk by and everything in me wants to be like, hey, look, man, like I got an injury. And that's why she's carrying my stuff. You know what I mean? And so sometimes we get these insecurities because we know that our lives look funny in a way that doesn't make sense to other people. And you just got to not apologize for who you are and what you need. I don't need to explain myself to those people. Let them look at me weird. It is what it is. All that matters is that her and I are cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Amen.
I got one more rule for you. I'm going to save it for the private podcast. It's called the repurchase rule. We're going to talk about that because I want to do a deep dive on that with Ryan. We're constantly coming up with these new tools, these new boundaries that help us better hold on to the things that add value, let go of the things that don't, and bring things into our life that serve us for a particular season. It's called the repurchase rule. We'll talk about that on the private podcast, in addition to the Photo Friday home tour, the sucky ad segment. TK, the week you were gone for episode 364, you were sick and Wendy was here. You totally missed on the private podcast. I rapped a Pusha T verse.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go back and listen to it. But It was the worst ad I had ever heard. It was actually, no, it was the most disappointing ad that I had ever heard.
What?
I have one that now tops it.
Ooh,
as
I can't wait.
Worst advertisement of all time.
Oh, wow.
You'll check that out. Yeah. Patreon.com/The Minimalist. Malabam, what else you got for us?
Here's a minimalist insight from one of our listeners.
Hi, Josh and Ryan. This is Molly from Michigan. What we do is we will buy things on trips that aren't stereotypical souvenirs. They're more everyday type items. So, for example, on our honeymoon in Ireland, my husband bought a tweed jacket. And it's great. He wears it in the fall. He wears it in the spring. It's a perfect jacket for that time when it's just a little too cold for a sport coat, but it's too warm for a big pea coat, a big puffy down coat. And it really fits a spot in his wardrobe. And he was able to buy something there that's unusual, not the kind of thing that you would get here. And then every time he wears it, it reminds him of our trip, but it's not just some tchotchke.
All right, y'all. Before we get to our added value segment this week, real quick for right here, right now, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the minimalist. Actually, I have two things because Black Friday is coming up real soon. We have a Black Friday video. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. You got to check it out. It's over on YouTube, and it's called Let's Talk About Black Friday. It's one of the most popular things we've done on YouTube. A lot of people find value in it because we talk about not just the origins of Black Friday, but how Black Friday is absolutely making us miserable. The expectations of others or the expectations set forth by corporations often make us feel inadequate, insecure, ashamed, incomplete. And it's creating this incompletion in our lives, which then fuels the consumerism of Black Friday. Act now, supplies are limited, doorbuster sales. You can opt out of that. And that video will show you how. It's called Let's Talk About Black Friday. You can find it in the show notes or just look for that over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Minimalist. Also, coming up, our last Sunday symposium of the year, November 27th. Me, Ryan, TK, and the rest of the team will be here in LA. 200 seats only. It's the last Sunday symposium. We've had 3 magical Sunday symposiums, and they just keep getting better. It's not our intention to make them better, but they just do.
It just keeps every Sunday symposium. I'm like, oh, that was my favorite one.
Yes.
Oh no, this one's my favorite one. Yeah, it is pretty special.
Well, it sold out, but we just released 20 tickets, free tickets. Half the tickets are free, half are paid. If you can afford to buy a ticket, that will get a ticket for someone else who is in need. Or if you can't afford it, show up. You just need a free ticket. You can go to sundaysymposium.com. We'd love to have you there. Help us build this community together. One thing I noticed this last one, a friend of mine came and she mentioned that I was amazed by how many, she came by herself. And she said, I was amazed by how many people actually just show up by themselves.
Yeah.
And it's that deep need for community. You can connect with other people. You're not forced to. We don't say, hey, you have to talk to your neighbor for 3 minutes or anything like that. But you can show up by yourself. You can grab one free ticket. You can be there. You can have this community experience with us. We never know what to expect, except it's been a magical time every time. Yeah. November 27th at noon, downtown Los Angeles at Dynasty Typewriter. Sundaysymposium.com is where you can find the free tickets. Get them before they are gone. It's the last one of the year.
Yeah.
For our added value segment this week, I was thinking about what is one possession. Earlier on the private podcast, we were talking about the repurchase rule.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were to lose something, would I repurchase it? What is the most valuable or most useful item that I have in my home? And certainly one of the most useful items I have is a pull-up bar.
Yeah.
The one I use called the Perfect Pull-Up. Now, I can tell you inflation's really getting to us because I remember I spent $20 on this. It was $19.95, and they're $32 now for the same pull-up bar.
Yeah.
but it's well worth it. It's something I use every day. I hang from it constantly. I'm hanging, and it really helps with my shoulders. If you have any neck pain, shoulder pain, back pain, hanging from it for an extended period of time. And then also just doing pull-ups throughout the day. Every time I go to the bathroom, I'm going to do 6 pull-ups real quick, right? And it's on the way to the bathroom. It's not like I have to exert a whole lot more effort. And it's built this beautiful routine into my days. And for $30, it's something I use every single day of my life. You can see it here on the screen if you're watching the video version of the podcast. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. It's for $30. It's the thing that adds the most value to my life. And I was thinking about this the other day. If I lost it, if it broke, it's the first, I would replace it immediately because I get so much value from it. Now, doesn't mean, will you get value from it? Well, yeah, only if you use it. Just hanging up a pull-up bar in your house doesn't do anybody anything. In fact, it could become clutter. It could get in the way for you. It could become an eyesore because, while it looks fine, I would prefer that it was invisible. And so, yes, it takes up a little bit of visual space, right? But it's something I use every day, and I get immense value from it.
Yeah,
Josh, I have one too. I wanted to ask you directly, do you ever use the pull down thing? You see how it is in the photo?
No, but my wife does.
Really? What does she do to do that? Like, does she do something? Is it just because she's shorter or?
No, it's because she can't do a bunch of pull-ups at once. And so it's almost like doing an assisted pull-up essentially. So it's allowing you to pull, but you have your feet on the ground, so you're not pulling your full body weight all the way up.
Yeah, and it does work a different muscle group in the back when you do those. Yeah, whatever position that's called. I used to do those as well. Like I would do pull-ups. I don't have a perfect pull-up. I need to get one. So we moved to this apartment, and it was during the pandemic. I couldn't find a perfect pull-up bar. So I got one that very similar to what we brought on tour with us in 2014.
Yeah.
And I do miss the being able to like have a couple of different exercises with that bar. Anyway.
Yeah. I use it every day. Yeah. And it's one of the things that adds the most value to my life. It's probably my most useful possession. By the way, TK, we got a bunch more surprise questions on the private podcast this week, like how do I keep laundry supplies and cleaning supplies to a minimum? How do I opt out of the holiday gift exchange at work? What is the Minimalists' new repurchase rule? And how will it help you let go? Plus a million more questions for the Minimalists. And if you want to hear all that, check out the Minimalist private podcast at patreon.com/theminimalists or click the link in the description. That's our show for today, y'all. If you leave here today with just one message, let it be this. Love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.